I was an only child from divorced parents who divorced really early. Just where my mom lived, like we didn't have a lot of money. And so the only thing I could do was just like ride my bike, work out, hang out. My dad was a West Point guy. Ever since I was, a young kid, all I wanted to be was an airborne ranger. Went to the academy, graduated, and then it was 2001 time frame. Freshman plebe year at West Point. Thursday before the Army-Navy game, they do some big pep rallies and everything else, and they do a military demonstration. It was on this football field. All of a sudden, the lights went black all over post. It was absolute darkness. Out of nowhere, this bird comes flying in over the top, miniguns blazing, dropping brass. Fast ropes come out of the back. Rangers are sliding down that rope full of hate and discontent, grabbing up automatic weapons, just firing, and like out of the woods comes these two RSOB, and like they're just on fire. And all I could think was like, those are my people. I'm gonna go hang out with those guys. I mean, that is like rough rolling with a pack of lions. And then when I was in officer basic course, one of my mentors there, he was the Ranger Regimental Fire Support Officer. He just left the regiment. And he, pulled in all the top performers and for, pre-ranger training. And I'll never forget, like September 11th that morning, him walking into the back of the class, shutting the door and saying, "Hey, everybody shut up," and like turning on the TV and watching the second plane fly into the towers. And it was like, you guys are going to war.
What do we have? We don't.
It looks like a new plume, a new large plume of smoke.
Only one time.
From that moment forward, it was like there was no other option other than special operation. So the Ranger Orientation Program, so it's the officer and senior enlisted selection program for regiment. And they bring you into this little teeny tiny white room, 2 chairs, white table. I mean, it's all white, and the Ranger Regimental Psych sits down with you, and he opens up the packet, and he peers into the depths of your soul. He's like, "You don't have empathy." And then you walk into this interview in a room in front of all these badass warriors, and then he tells them how to shoot holes in you, and they're questioning your empathy. I left there feeling like a horrible human. There's a period of time in between when you get selected and you actually show up to your unit. So you fly home, and they have those words of the month that are always like stuck in the median, which they want people to concentrate on. And like, I kid you not, I drove onto post after coming home, and the word of the month was empathy. Empathy. Get to the regiment, we're there for a train up, and then we deploy to Afghanistan. Rolling out of the front gate and seeing Bagram, which is a pretty good town by Afghan standards. It was the poorest place I'd ever seen. 50, 60 kids around the front gate, begging, skinny, cold, no food, barely clothed. And you're like, oh my God, I feel so sorry for these kids.
No, I don't got it.
And, our whole thing, it was this really difficult mission. It's called Operation Winter Strike. Our whole mission was to deny Al-Qaeda fighters winter safe havens at like 10,000 plus foot villages. We lost a lot of friends, and like, it got worse. 6-month break in between deployments, and then we went to Iraq. It was game on. That whole empathy thing went out the door. Everywhere we go, it speeds the violence and balance of action in an overwhelming force. After that deployment from Iraq, my 5 years were up. Like, I really didn't see the war ending. We were catching was teenage kids, right? And as long as we're over there in uniforms and, people are giving birth, this is not ending. We weren't doing it right. And now I'm home. I got 2 kids in a tiny little apartment with my wife. I'm going to work, 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. every day. And I am like plummeting, just drinking a lot. I got into a really nasty motorcycle accident in 2009. I got ran over by a semi truck. And I just realized like how close I was to being dead. You know, that's that low point where you come to those realizations like, do I want to be remembered as that type of person? Do I want to leave that kind of impression on my kids? Like, what's that going to do for them? So as soon as I could start like moving again and was healthy enough to travel, I went back to Afghanistan. And so I was just, you know, I would go back to Afghanistan every couple months, you know, to try to pursue some bigger contracts because there was a lot of zeros floating around those days. And I ended up at an Afghan military conference. I'm this young officer and nobody's talking to me. And then across the way, there's another guy, long hair and a beard. Nobody's talking to him either. And he was a former Marine captain who was running a combat boot factory in Kabul. And he's like, hey man, why don't you come by tomorrow? And I got up the next morning, got in the car, went over to the factory, and I saw hundreds of people working. It was unbelievable. It provided a lift off my heart. So we're standing on the factory floor. I was like, man, this is really cool. Like, hey, John, what are you going to make when the war ends? And he just looked at me and without skipping a beat, he said, no, man, we're just going to shut it all down. I was furious. And in that moment of fury, I looked down on this table and there's this combat boot sole with a flip-flop thong punched through it. I was like, dude, it's ugly and cool. I was like, man, like combat and flip-flop, the juxtaposition of the words, like bouncing around in my head, the light bulb goes off. And I just look at John and I go,